I live on Long Island, New York, in Suffolk County, and it 100% absolutely, at the moment, has a deer problem. Depending on who you ask and with the context of the conversation, you might get a couple different answers of why. Some might say it's overregulation with hunting. Some might say that they're swimming over from Connecticut. Some might say it's the warm winters and they just keep breeding and they don't necessarily essentially die off in the winter like a lot of animals do. It's been too warm to keep breeding. But the reality of the situation is while they're incredibly cute animals, they are definitely a hazard to our way of life for a couple of reasons. One, the ticks on deer are insane, particularly if they're overpopulated. They spread like crazy, and deer also carry Lyme's disease, can carry Lyme's disease, which can infect humans, but also dogs. And if you go into now a bedded area or like a wooded area, there's a ton of ticks. That's been a problem on Long Island for a while, but particularly more now, especially even more with the warmer winters that we're having. We're not having all these crazy hard freezes, which the ticks need to die off, essentially lowering the population of ticks. And then you add on the fact that it has to be even colder because typically now if these ticks are on the deer is actually keeping the tick warmer. So even if it is freezing, it's not necessarily killing the ticks because they're on the warmth of the body of the deer. Another problem is actually, this one's not as bad, but they cause a havoc with gardens and like fences and property. Essentially, we'd call property damage. Eating plants, breaking, jumping over fences. Particularly, actually, for first an example, there was a deer living in the backyard of my parents' house a couple months ago over the summer, and he got spooked and tried jumping the fence. He had an injured leg. He couldn't make it over the fence, so then he actually ran through the fence, like a wrought iron fence, essentially, or like a metal fence, pushing apart the two pieces of metal, and now there's damage to the fence. And another buddy of mine, all of his plants are destroyed because of the deer. It's not the end of the world, but it is property damage. The third and probably the most dangerous reason is travel damage, what I would call, or travel hazard, where deer, they're so overpopulated at the moment that they cause issues on while you're driving. You could just be driving across. For example, I have a couple first-hand experiences, or like from family and friends, where I've seen them on the road all the time. And in fact, actually, look at this video. This is about a mile and a half from my house. I live in a very residential suburban area. Now, there's some places with property. For example, there's a lot of, not necessarily in my neighborhood, but around me within a mile or two, you have properties that are like an acre large or 3/4 of an acre. However, this is a mile and a half from me. This was a Tuesday afternoon at like 4 p.m. It's crazy. Like, now I was driving particularly slow because I knew my buddy lives over there and I knew that the deer were over there. But if I didn't know that and I'm just driving like normal on a regular road, that's terrifying. Like, because, I happen to look down or look at the radio or look, at anything, and then, you crush that deer, and with more, like, dangerously, you crush your car and potentially hurt yourself or anybody in the car. In fact, they actually say, I've heard, that if you're potentially going to hit an animal like that, you actually are not supposed to slow down, because if you slow down, the impact of the animal will actually push it into your windshield and can potentially go through the windshield. You're actually supposed to just maintain speed or essentially speed up, so that if you're going to inevitably hit it, it goes over the car. That being said, my wife almost hit a deer a couple weeks ago. My buddy almost hit a deer a couple weeks ago. My mom actually hit a deer recently. Thankfully, everybody's okay. I don't know what happened to the deer. It ran off. But it is absolutely a hazard. And it's been something I'm thinking about a lot, because we as a society, we want to protect animals, and I totally get it, because as a society, as human nature, we typically take things to the extreme. You look at like the bison count in America. We used to have millions and millions of bison. Now there's like 30,000 bison, which maybe sounds like a big number, but when we had 9 million and now there's 30,000, like, we totally decimated that group of animals. That being said, it's definitely an issue on Long Island. It's something that I think that we have to work on and figure out, whether it be through legislation, whether it be through allowing potential more hunting in certain areas. That's a question for debate. Back to the overregulation of hunting. There's a lot of areas on Long Island, even particularly around me, where you can't hunt, and therefore it leads to overpopulation of deer. And ideas that could be like, for example, there's acreage, like I'm talking like 15, 30, 100, even potentially some even more acres that are just untouched, whether an untouched preserved land or just land. And I'm not saying we get rid of preserves or anything like that, but untouched land. And even more so than, we it's like trails for hiking and stuff. Now, obviously, that would cause danger to, to people, but through the right regulation, you could potentially be like, hey, this is closed for this weekend for hunting, or for these 5 days out of the season they're closed for hunting, whatever the case may be. You could work around that, right? So that all being said, I'm going hunting this afternoon. Now, I'm hunting private property. I've hunted public land a lot. There's a 70-acre piece of land. And I got my first deer on that land, actually. And now you can also hunt through certain regulations and laws on private property. You have to obviously have the permission of the owner of the property. You also have to follow certain rules. For example, you have to be a certain distance from other properties or other dwelling places. And technically, if you hit the deer and it runs off onto another property, you're supposed to get permission from that property owner to go get the deer off that land. It's a whole bunch of rules and regulations, but as long as you're following them properly, you can hunt on private land. And so I've actually taken 2 deer on that private land this season, totaling a 3 deer. I haven't been hunting in a couple of weeks. The last couple times that I went hunting, it was in a particularly busy season of my life, and I had seen this beautiful buck, and I let pass a couple of doe shots because it would have been processing a deer is a lot of work. It's about 5 to 6 hours worth of work if you want from actually field dressing it to putting in to everything to down to the butchering to the actual putting in of the Ziplocs and everything. Or we actually what's it called, like vacuum seal it. We don't use Ziplocs, but vacuum sealing. It's somewhere between a 4 to 6 hour process depending on how meticulous you want to be. I didn't have that time necessarily, but I would have made that time for that buck. The buck was probably like a 10 to 12 point. It was unreal. It was gorgeous. That being said, I had a couple perfect 10 to 20 yard shots with these does, and it's like, well, this is a beautiful opportunity. It wouldn't be wise for me to take this hot shot because of how much time would be entailed after the fact. That being said, I finally have some time on the hand. Because again, you need the time to hunt, but then you also need the time to process after the fact. So I'm going out for the first time in a couple of weeks, and I'm really excited. It's pretty chilly, not freezing, but chilly, cold, wet day. It's been raining pretty heavily all day. It's supposed to potentially be lightening up, but come along for the journey with me. We're going hunting private land, Suffolk County, Long Island, New York. So it's currently 2:45 in the afternoon. Sunset in New York by my area right now is 4:26 today. We are getting dressed. I usually funny enough, leave all my gear, everything, including my bow, in my truck. I have a rack for my bow, so like it hangs behind my seat, and then my all this dress gear and stuff I just leave in the bed of my truck, and it's all ready to go for whenever and whenever I want to go hunting, which is pretty cool. However, I haven't been in a couple days, or actually I'm sorry, a couple weeks. So that being said, like I wanted, and I knew it was getting cold, like really cold, so I actually wanted to take out all of my gear from my truck, because like I have range finders and everything in there, so I didn't want to, I didn't know if it would freeze the range finder and stuff, so I figured, why not just take it out of the truck. I have no idea, I haven't been out in a while, so I don't exactly know how cold it is. And what's annoying is actually my boots are in the truck still, and I don't have shoes in here to get to the truck, so I gotta figure that out. But let's get into the truck. So it's actually still raining more than I thought it was. It's not like pouring, but it's raining for sure. That'll be fun. Thankfully, I have the gear necessary to stay warm, so I'm not freezing out. It's actually not that cold in general today. It's definitely warmed up, which I was texting my buddy JP about this. JP, I don't know if I mentioned him, but he and I have gone hunting quite a few times together, and he's actually the guy that I got my first deer with, which was pretty crazy story. In fact, let me take this off. This looks ridiculous for now. So he and I had gone out. I think this was the first time we had gone out together, and we're walking. I've been hunting the specific woods, and it's 70 acres of state land, and he had been. I wanted to show him it, so I wanted to hunt it together with him. So we go, and I'm showing him the land. We get there pretty early, a couple hours before sundown, And the reason I bring up sundown is because you're allowed to hunt 30 minutes before sunrise all the way up until 30 minutes after sundown. So that being said, if it's 2:45 right now, sundown is 4:30 today, you could technically hunt till 5. Shots get, depending on the lighting and the trees and the tree cover and everything, where the sun is, shots can get a little sketchy anywhere past 15 minutes after sundown. So I don't love going all the way to that half an hour. It's pretty dark, and my biggest fear, and I think every hunter's biggest fear would be not getting a safe shot off where like it only injures the animal instead of killing it, because that's just unnecessary, and it's terrible. Another side note is, like, we're talking about killing animals here, and I understand that, and it's a pretty weighty topic, and I don't devalue that at all. In fact, like, there have been times where, like, I've gotten a deer and it's been like, wow, this is a pretty heavy thing, and you're taking a life. But I have a hard time, to be honest with you, with people, and I'm not judging them, I'm just saying I have a hard time with it because it seems a little hypocritical with people that say, I don't know how you could ever hunt it. You're just killing animals. Meanwhile, they love steak and chicken and whatever the case, like, chicken parm and whatever kind of steaks, and, like, I'm like, but that's the same thing. Like, you're just hiring a hitman to do your killing and picking up at the store. I'm actually doing it myself. Now, I understand now that's the extreme. Like, people are like, I don't know how you could ever kill something. The extreme, the middle is like, I respect that you do it. I don't know if I could do it, but I respect the fact that you do it. That, I can understand that sentiment a lot more. But back to the story with JP. He and I go out. I'm showing him the land. And then all of a sudden we say, okay, let's go to the tree stands, because we had set up a tree stand together, and we're walking into the woods, and we're like barely into the woods, and we see this huge doe with two little smaller does, and we're like, what the, like, we're not even, like, we're not ready yet. So we stop behind a tree and we're watching it, and it's watching us but isn't moving, and I take a shot and I actually missed. It was way too short. My rangefinder wasn't working, and I thought it was 30 yards, and it was probably 40 yards, and it was dead accurate, but way too short, probably about 10 yards too short. They run off, and we're like, oh, come on, man. So now I'm sitting in my tree stand, all angry, all pissed off and everything, and just thinking about my actions, because there's nothing to do other than, you could go on your phone, but I try very hard not to stay on my phone, just because, like, I want to be in the moment and not be distracted, because there have been times I've been on my phone, and I look up, and there's a deer in front of me. I'm like, what the, like, So I'm, all of a sudden, the deer run back in, all of a sudden, like an hour and a half later, 12 yards in front of me. One spots me, one doesn't, and I take the shot, and it gets in, it runs off. Then, they actually both run off, and I hear, now all of a sudden, JP take a shot. And then all of a sudden, within, like, I don't know, 2 minutes, I see him starting to get down from his tree stand, which that's a big no-no, because you actually want to wait at least a half an hour, if not longer, to go searching for the deer before you get down, because if it's not, it can take a couple minutes or a little bit to die, and you don't want it to you don't want to spook it and it now gets up and runs off further. So you actually want to wait a little. And he got up at 2 minutes. I was like, yelling, like, what are you doing? Trying to call him. Phone call's not going through. All right, sorry, cut that clip in half, because I'm out of breath. I stopped by my parents really quick and borrowed my dad's sled, which is what you put the deer on. When you get the deer, you can drag it out of the woods. I did not have a sled for my second deer, and I was dragging it by legs. It was way heavier than I thought it'd be. So every time I go now, I just stop by and pick up the sled, because my dad's a big hunter. That being said, you're not supposed to get down from the tree right away. You want to actually leave time for it to die, and then you can go down. But he went down in 2 minutes. I'm like, what is this guy doing? Where am I going? And finally, I get in touch with him. He's like, dude, I actually saw both of our deer drop. Crazy story. We both got a deer, and they're both 10 feet from each other. It was just an insane story. We were 70 yards apart, and they just happened to we both got them they died 10 feet apart from each other. It was crazy. That being said, a whole long story to tell you that. I was texting JP today, my hunting buddy, and he's like, dude, this is perfect time, because it's warmed up a little bit. The past couple days it's been brick cold. So he's like, it's warmed up a little bit, so the deer are starting to move again to start eating more. It is definitely raining more than I thought it was right now. In fact, when I went to go get the sled, I dropped my my hat, and now it's wet. But it's pretty. It's not like fresh rain, like teeming, but it's raining. You know, I would say it's raining heavy, small drops, if that makes sense. Where like, you know, sometimes you like those bucket drops are like huge. Not necessarily, but it is raining small drops. So I'm gonna get there probably, I don't know, what time is it? Oh wow, it's later than I thought. Okay, it's 3:04 right now, so I'm about 15 minutes away, if not 20. I'll probably get to the tree stand the latest 3:25, which means I have about an hour and 15 to an hour and a half to hunt, which is a short amount of time. Usually people want to be there all day or several hours beforehand. I'm working with what I have with my job and with what the work that I was trying to get done today. So while it is my hobby and something I enjoy doing, I also try not to let it get totally in the way of work. Sometimes it does, but I try to be responsible with that. So let's drive, we'll head over there, and then we'll see what happens, man. So there's also this thing called the hunter's prayer. I don't know exactly what it is or where it came from, but the sentiment of it is actually really beautiful. It's essentially saying, like, Lord, I go out there today, and may it be a prosperous hunt, you know, and may it recognize, let me see the beauty that you created in this world, but may it be a prosperous hunt, may it be a safe hunt, may it be a clean and swift kill, meaning let no animals suffer and unreasonably. And it's just a beautiful prayer, and that's kind of my prayer today. And every time I go out, it's like, if it's His will for me to get something to today, I pray that be the case. And if it's not, then I'm cool with that. But if I do, I want it just to be a safe and clean kill. Particularly, if I had a preference, I would love it facing, coming in from, I guess that would be, I'm coming in from the, what am I coming in? I'm coming in, I'm heading east. So I guess I want it to come from the south going north, because that's facing the property of my buddy that I'm hunting on, his property. As opposed to if it was facing any other direction, you know, it could potentially run onto somebody else's property, which again is legal. It's just that you now have to have a conversation with the person, be like, hey, so I was hunting on this person's property, which I have permission to, but there's deer on your property. And my dad's been in a position where somebody said, no, you can't come on my property and get the deer. And it's like what, you can't do anything about it. And it's horrible, because now it's a waste, and it's terrible that somebody would do that. It's disgusting, actually, to be honest with you. Like, look, now if the person was like, sorry, you can't take it, and I'm gonna take it, like, sure, like, it's still wrong, but like, at least don't let the animal go to waste. Like, now it's senseless. Like, what? I'm sure most people are reasonable, and even if they don't agree with it, but it's just, you know, you run that risk of conversation, which I would prefer to not have, but it's something that, you know, is necessary if that be the case. So another thing that I learned and have recommend, you know, I'm sure if you're an avid hunter, you definitely know this. If you're not, though, this was something that I found really helpful, is, you know, when you're just sitting there kind of doing nothing with your tree stand, if you have a rangefinder, find a bunch of different trees and spots, and like get a lay of the land, and like, I know when I'm sitting in that tree stand or when I'm sitting on the ground there, I know exactly which tree is what. So when a deer walks in, I say, okay, that's it's at 50 yards right now. Now it's at 30 yards. Now it's at 20 yards. Okay, like, and I just have an idea of it, so that when it actually gets in range, I know which pin to use. Because obviously, if you shoot with the wrong pin, the wrong sight, essentially, the deer can go over the deer's back or under or whatever, you know. So you want it to be you want to just know and not have to really think about it. I also want to add to the fact of, like, whoa, when we were talking about earlier, I don't know, I guess you could say, like, the allowing more hunting. Part of the reason that, like, it really bothers me, like, the overpopulation of deer, which, while yes, it's great for hunters because it increases your chance of hunting, it bothers me because so many deer get hit by cars and then are just dead on the side of the road, and it's just a waste. And now, granted, how many squirrels get run over, how many raccoons get run over, and nobody's really crying about them. Like, look, it's sad for sure, but, like, nobody's crying about it. But to me, it's like that. Like, most people don't necessarily eat squirrel, while you can, and it's actually on my list to go hunting for squirrel. I just love to try it. A lot of people do eat deer, and you get significantly more meat from a deer. In fact, I've gotten, like, in total, probably about 150 to 160 pounds of meat this year from my deers, total. That's after, like, that's processed meat, meaning, like, after it's been butchered, after it's been quartered, like that's the meat that's in my freezer now. Like, that's a lot of food, you know, and to see that just on the side of the road decomposing is Granted, I guess you could say it's the modern circle of life, but it is kind of sad, you know, and like, I hate to see that. So I'd rather it be taken ethically and put on somebody's table than, you know, just dead on the side of the road. So you got to check your state laws and your local laws, but one thing that is legal in New York and in my area is what they call electronic game calls for a certain game, and it is legal for deer. And you just have to know your rules, because some people actually, I was texting somebody, he's like, dude, that's illegal, and I'm like, no, I was like, oh shoot, is it? And I googled it and I saw it on the New York State website that it is actually legal. That being said, it's amazing how they work. Some people just, I guess, filmed or created, I don't even know how it works, but online, you just type in on YouTube, like doe bleat or buck grunt or whatever the case may be, whatever sound you want, and they have YouTube videos of the animals making the sound, and you play them, and it's remarkable. The animals, they can sometimes respond, and they respond typically pretty well over here, which is wild. So that's what I'll be doing today. My buddy has an actual buck grunt where like you can actually make it grunt, but I don't have one of those, and I'm working with what I had, and everybody that I tell it to is like amazed that it works. And I was like, I don't know, man. I had an idea one day. I was like, let me try it, and it worked. It worked really well. So I'll be trying that today. It is definitely raining more than I thought. I actually thought the rain would have stopped by now. The forecast earlier today was it was supposed to stop. It is what it is, man. All right, we just pulled into 320. I'm about to get all geared up and walk into the woods. I'll probably be filming on my iPhone going forward if I film anything. So let's take it from there, man. Wish me luck. All right, so it's actually been, I don't know, 2 weeks, 2.5 weeks since I filmed that last portion of the video. I ended up hunting, as you saw. I was going out. It was pouring rain. It was pretty cold. And then I ended up feeling so sick after the fact. Like, I had all these body chills, and then was sick for a couple of days after the fact. I think that I had something. I didn't feel great early before I left. Felt a little better as I was going. When I got back, felt terrible. I don't think, obviously, hunting made me sick. I just think I had something in my system. And, you know, just over the course of the day, I kind of ignored the symptoms. It was like, I still want to go out. But let me tell you about what happened and the couple times I've been out since then. That day, it was crazy. I didn't see too much. All I saw was some movement in the distance of some deer in the distance. Maybe like 80 yards, like 60, maybe 60 yards out. And then all of a sudden this deer beds down 60 yards in front of me. It has no idea I'm there. Just lays down, just looking around, just bedding down. For those that aren't familiar, which is essentially like laying down, like they're going to go to sleep. Yep, so beds down, just lays around under a bush, just chilling. The whole time I'm there, has no idea. And then all of a sudden, actually, I do a call to bring him out. I think it was a spike, if I remember correctly. And he actually comes. He comes out, starts walking towards me, starts walking directly towards me. And now, I didn't love the idea of taking the spike, and he was kind of almost, he was decent size actually, but, you know, I just had these little spikes on him. And I was like, it's a lot of work, and I never really even got a perfect, like a good shot on him. Like, he actually just walked straight towards me, where it would have been just a straight on shot. And then he walked under my tree and was just kind of putzing around, and you know, I just let him go. And then I went out recently with my dad. I think the day before Christmas Eve. We spooked some stuff or bumped some stuff when we were walking in, Didn't see much after that. I don't know where they've gone, man. In the early season, I was seeing them left and right. It was crazy. And then now I haven't really been seeing much. I went on New Year's Eve, and I did see a decent amount. Nothing too crazy, nothing close enough, nothing under you probably 40 yards. I couldn't stay that long that day, so like had I been able to stay longer, I would have probably been able to maybe see something closer. But whatever. And then I went last night, and I didn't see a single thing. Not even not a single deer, which happens all the time for a lot of people. But in this particular area that I've been hunting, I've been seeing a lot of action, at least in the distance. Sometimes I didn't see a single thing. And what's even more frustrating now at hunting towards the end of the season, all the leaves have fallen off the trees, so you can see 200, 300, 400 yards out, which is kind of discouraging because you could see that there's obviously nothing there. Whereas opposed to earlier season, you have really no idea what's maybe 50 yards out in front of you. You can't see, and all of a sudden there's a deer. You know what I mean? So there's this hope that maybe they're back there. But towards the end of the season, you're like, I don't see anything for 500 yards. So that means it has to even come into range of 500 yards and then walk towards me. So I don't know. And there's still a month left in the season, pretty much. So, it's early January as I'm filming this, and it's also the start of shotgun season for people that want to go shotgun hunting. I went on a couple times last year and it was cool. I don't know those woods too much, so it's you kind of just at this point I'd just be guessing of where to set up. And I really like bow hunting. There's a challenge to it. I've been practicing my bow every single. I practice every day just to get. I want to be as good as I can. And that's the story of hunting private land on private property on Long Island. So I'd love to hear your experiences if you're in the area or different areas or just your hunting experiences. Leave a comment below and let me know what your thoughts are.